Cayman 89.9 FM.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here on this wonderful Wednesday edition of Talk Today as we get a chance to share with you at the outset about intellectual property. We invite you to be a part of the discussion. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Welcome back. Thank you again for joining us as we have the opportunity now to share with you not just the 1 year anniversary of the intellectual property legislation, but to sort of remind us how important that could be to our economy and to the global community as we welcome the Deputy Registrar General, Mr. Donald Dixon, and the head of intellectual property, Ms. Candice Westby. Now, I always refer to you within the context of being part of the General Registry. But I'm glad you always remind me that this is part of the International Property Office. At the outset, maybe help us as a public to become accustomed, familiar with SIPO, not just as an acronym, but the importance of it. So, always a pleasure, man. I always enjoy watching you, listening to you, and seeing that youthful smile.
Well, thanks, Dwayne. Thank you for having us. And we're certainly glad to be here this afternoon just to if you want to say share in the celebration of our first year anniversary. August 1st was the date of the that we rolled out the new IP regime. So we're happy with the way it's gone so far.
Ms. Candice?
Thank you for having me.
Something that I remember initial discussions some years ago about these things coming online, what it'll mean. Mm-hmm. And I've always reflected on a number of classmates. Back then, there were no smart boards. There were still slide rules. Dinosaurs were still dancing outside on the field. Had to be careful. But I had classmates then who had ideas, and over the years, even in recent times, they would say, "Boy, I always worried that if I put this out there, somebody, because always an idea is taken." Mm-hmm. But now they're recognizing that they can protect those ideas. It's just a concept. It's just a thought process, and it means something to them. And these are your local guys that you played marbles with, together you chase mangoes and went in the sea. They appreciate it, but the international community equally.
Yeah, and I think, well, there's something else coming as well that I'll mention in a minute, but just we can take us back, just a step so that the general public can understand where we came from, where we're at right now. Many years ago, when I say many years ago, it's probably in the region of, I would say, 12 to 16 years. Mm-hmm. The government of the day then and some senior civil servants that was involved in the financial services recognized that at some point we had to start looking at revising our IP laws, which was really a bare bone minimum. So it started way back then, and as we progressed along the way, there were various hurdles, of course. And then about 6-7 years ago, it got into full stream. We got some of the stakeholders in the private sector who dealt with IP. Some of those has it as a primary source of business. Others has it as a secondary. And the secondary part was probably because of the regime that was in place at the time. So as we went along, we got the stakeholders involved, and we got together and we started looking at new legislation, and we formed in recent years an IP committee, and from that committee came the new legislation. Of course, as we got closer to it and we started making noise about what was coming, then other industry, including international industries, started making inquiries. And August 1st, the new legislation commenced. And to just give you an idea of how it ran, prior to that new legislation, we averaged about 300 new applications per annum. Okay, within the first 3 months of the new legislation coming in, we had already exceeded 300. As of August 1st, we're up to, around 621 new applications. That is, application that has come in to be brand new, has never been on the register. So we've doubled the number, right? And there's more to come. Now, you're speaking about our friends playing marbles and looking mangoes and designing something. The other thing that came into play then was a design rights legislation. But that legislation, you have to first register in the UK, just like the old trademarks law was. We are now in the drafting stages of local registration or legislation to permit local registrations as we do trademarks. So the guy that you're playing marble with that drew the little design in the sand and said that will work for X, if you get it, at some point in the not too distant future, he'll be able to come in or get that registered as a design in Cayman.
And I didn't say that, for people just to see this some sort of joke in the past, because this is real. We've gone, even. Yeah. Sometimes they were making a gig or a kite, and somebody would say, what if you did this?
Yes.
And they didn't really have anywhere to move that forward to, what is the word that we use, monetize it. Now they can, and they are.
Yes.
The public, is becoming aware of it. The international community has always been there. Ms. Candice?
Yes, one of the things I always encourage people as soon as you get that idea, because intellectual property does not necessarily protect the idea, but how you put that idea into words or how you put it into some kind of machine or whatever it is, if it's an invention. So for me, and with certain types of intellectual property, if you disclose it to the public, you lose your registration rights, like patents. So, and designs, if it's disclosed to the public before you apply for registration, then that's a bar from getting that registration. So before you go, you have the idea on the playground or you're at home and you think, I can make this better. Put that idea into words and then see what you need to do to get it registered, so that once you have it registered, then you can start shopping around, file your application, and then you can start shopping around for investors and so on, but register.
Something, and I say this not just out of a sense of pride, but hopefully it'll get other people to think. So knowing that this discussion would take place today, I reached out to three people that I know we grew up with, we got in trouble with. We grew up together. And long ago, I don't remember who it was. They say it was me, but I don't think it was. I said, well, you got this idea, just put a date on it, so that when you can go back to your notebook, you can say, oh, look, on this date I had this idea. Sometimes it was just some words down, sometimes a little drawing. So two of them went back to their little journal, they call it something else. And some of those ideas were 20 years old. Those same ideas, or semblance of those ideas, are on the market, being sold internationally. But prior to that, that was a concept that they had. Now, what's on the market in one instance is a lot better, but conceptually not as good. I'm thinking, wow, you had this thing, and you were able enough to sort of put it down, but that was it. Right. And how many of us have been in that position? One night we wake up with this thought, but we go nowhere with it because we don't think there's any way to go.
Yes, so you talk yourself out of it, saying this isn't really, that good.
And I think you just touched on something they're doing that this is a message that we've been preaching as well, that when people think of the IP or the ideas, one of the misconceptions that people have, we're a small country, it doesn't mean nothing. And that is so wrong.
Yeah.
You know, you said it. It's now international. We know of an instance where someone designed something for someone else, and that ended up being a design on children's toys that being manufactured by the hundreds of thousands in another country. Yep. And it all came from right on these islands, but they can't put a claim to it because they literally gave away their right.
That's it. And it's some of it's because I don't think that we understand that there's a value in this thing. Mm-hmm. We probably didn't know. Now, I want to ask, you said at some point, hopefully in short order, we'll have legislation for the design rights. Now we have to go to the UK. Why? Why is it that way? I mean, you know,
it was that way. That was the fastest way that we could actually get design rights.
Some kind of protection.
Some kind of protection, right? And when I say in the not too distant future, we were hoping to get it to the minister and to cabinet for trying to make the September sitting. Of
November is still.
Of course, we have to, the legal drafting has to go through and make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So that's the process we're in right now. So we're not too far off from reaching the goal.
Let me ask of you, in the past, from what I recall, it was that for those law firms particularly that were doing IP, and I guess I should ask and confirm, IP in this case is intellectual property, not the Internet Protocol. And it isn't, well, let's leave that intellectual property. For that, we would get law firms here who would get the patents, the trademarks and all the things, and coming in from the UK to be registered here. And then I remember you have to go to the Gazette to see that it was published. And that was a way to protect it. Now, we don't have to only do that. We can do it on our own register here, right?
Direct. We call it local registrations. So the process is right now is that they will go to an agent. You have to be a licensed agent in order to make the application for the filing. And there's reasons for that. And when we started first, some people really got upset that they couldn't just walk in and do it because obviously it's going to be a few dollars more having to use an agent. But when they look at it in the long run, we actually are saving them money because they were action that if Candace, for instance, has to do an office action on something that was submitted, an office action is when something comes in that's not entirely right and we have to send it back. There's a fee for that. So each time that happens, you get charged. Now, if you get an agent who knows exactly what they're doing and how it has to come in, it's the right classes, all the commas are in the right place, the full stops are in, all that sort of stuff, then you're paying one fee and it saves you a lot of headaches, right?
And time, too.
And time, right.
And that's the thing, though. I mean, you look at trademarks and all those service marks, and they have meaning and value, and the slightest little variation could, it's not this, it's actually this. They look similar, but they're different.
Right.
So you want to be able to protect that. Susan was reminding us of our first break. Let's take that. When we come back, you can tell us more about it, what's to come, and excited to see what that could mean for our economy and for entrepreneurs and the like. Okay. For those who are joining us, certainly 1-800-534-8255 or 949-8037 and at 1 o'clock. You got something else in store for you, but you know what? Like lunch, you got to take it slowly and one bite at a time. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Nursing, education, social work, media studies, hospitality, electrical, plumbing, AC. Wow, I didn't even know that the University College of the Cayman Islands offered all that.
Yes, all that and more, as well as event management and QuickBooks. They also did customized training for our staff last month. Hey, didn't your son just graduate from high school? Take him so he can apply for the fall semester.
Pursue your academic and professional goals at UCCI. Admissions are ongoing. Classes start August 27th. Visit them or call 623-8224 to learn more.
Not all insurance is created equal, but who has the time to shop around? Take the guesswork out of your insurance coverage with Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Let us match you with the best coverage to suit your needs at a price to suit your wallet. Plus, get superior customer service from dedicated claims professionals to ensure speedy claims processing. Get your insurance through Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Call us today at 949-7822 for a free quote. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Did you hear that Vant Motors has your sale going on now? And you get your choice on the money you'll save on your new car or truck?
My sale? My choice? Really?
Yeah, and they have lots of cars on sale, some up to $7,000 off.
Sounds pretty good.
It gets even better. You can choose to take the full discount, or you can get some or all of it as cash back.
Extra cash back would be great.
Exactly. And you can even use the savings to extend your warranty or service plan so you'll drive worry-free for years longer.
Another good idea.
If you want to upgrade with something like a new roof rack or backup camera, you can choose that too.
Wow, I get to choose?
Yeah, that's why it's your sale, your choice. Going on now at Vant Motors on Walkers Road, while stocks last.
Radio Cayman Super Jam Show.
Tune in every Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. for
Radio Cayman Super Jam Show,
the #1 drive time entertainment show on your radio.
Another proud sponsor of the Super Jam Showdown.
Love you like a fresh vegetable.
The Georgetown Farmers Market, offering the freshest in local produce, preserves, and crafts.
Be proud to be Caymanian. Shop local at the Georgetown Farmers Market today.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Honored to be able to speak to Mr. Donald Dixon and Ms. Candace Westby as we talk about, the 1 year anniversary of our, was it IP registry in a sense? Or
an IP registration.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah.
SIPO.
SIPO. I mean, SIPO sounds like, maybe ciprofloxacin. I don't know. I'm short for some medicine.
But it's actually Cayman Islands Intellectual Property Office. So.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Oh, man. But something, if the listeners are just joining us or if they thought they heard it at the outset, it's worth repeating. In this 1 year, you've doubled the amount of registration. And well, you know what? Let's flash that a second. Why is that? I mean, it's obviously the answer, but
I think it's twofold. One is that we now made it easier to do registrations here, so clients don't have to go to the UK to register first and come here. Second thing is, which is more importantly, because of the new legislation, the IP law is now jurisdictional. In other words, if you're not registered in Cayman, you don't have protection here. So if you registered in the UK, as it was before, you automatically had could have an extended here and had the protection. That's not the case anymore. So if you want your protection and be protected in Cayman, then you must register here.
Two things from that then. When we look at intellectual property, because some of these are, could be a product, it could be a service, it's something. But you have this. You've put time and money and energy and thought in developing this thing. You want to be at least recognized or compensated or somehow, it's attributed to you. Now, internationally, being registered gives you a claim to say, well, yeah, see, this is mine. That has a value in itself, right? All right. What about to the extent then that somebody who is registered here, people say, well, Cayman, I mean, it's. Some of the politicians talk about it being a 2x4 island. Really, what's the value of that? I mean, registered there, you know, at the city of London or whatever. What's the importance? I mean, why is Cayman? Why is it significant to be registered here?
I think for brand owners who are, there are a lot of brand owners who enforce their rights in every single jurisdiction they can. And I remember reading an example of Nike when they first started out. They were registered in the countries that they thought were the main, of course, the United States. And I think they had a distributor in Spain that went ahead and registered Nike in Spain as a trademark. And they tried for years to get it back, and they couldn't, and eventually had to pay millions of dollars to get that trademark. So you can think that Cayman is a small little jurisdiction in the middle of nowhere that doesn't matter, but no, it does. And a lot of the times we feel like because we're in small countries that persons aren't paying attention to what we're doing. Oh, I made up a little brand here and I just use it in the Cayman Islands, so I don't need to worry about it. And with the internet now, somebody sees it, they take it, they can go register it in the U.S. and when you're ready, to expand on it, you can.
I think too, when I was looking at that, I think back to some examples in the other Caribbean territories, but also here, where a particular entrepreneur may have wanted to be creative and do a play on a particular product or so on, only to be told by international lawyers, hey, listen, that's a little too close to our stuff, we're gonna, and it's enforceable. But equally, when we look at Cayman as a financial center, the fact that what someone told me, within the top 10 of the U.S. debt is owned or operated through Cayman companies, we're seeing the significance of the Cayman financial vehicles in international finance. Right. It shows that we're somewhat relevant, some would say important, but somewhat relevant in the global sphere. Yes. It makes us position that much better.
Yeah, I mean, we are, Cayman on a whole is looked at, and just to give you an example, SIPO, and I use this term all the time, is in its infancy. In other words, we've just started local registration. Already within the first year of us doing that, we've got invited to be to join the INTA Leadership Committee, which is the International Trademark Association. That association has over 10,000 members. And we go to that annually with those persons. So we were asked to join that leadership, which rounds out about 1,500. So for a country just coming in to a new IP regime, obviously they know, well, Cayman is doing it, something good is happening here, and it's going to be right. And then in addition to that, then Candace got invited to join the committee that would head up leadership training for government officials in various jurisdictions for Latin America and the Caribbean. We personally don't like being part of Latin America and Caribbean. We want to be Caribbean, but that's another battle, right? Yeah. But at least we've been placed, or Cayman's been placed in these leadership roles so early in the beginning of SIPO that it's just kind of mind blowing.
It speaks to the competence, the integrity, and the intellect of our leadership.
Yes,
we do have a caller online as we go to our phones. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for calling.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for having this vibrant conversation with the intellectual copyright folks.
Well, thank you for listening and sharing, sir.
I am an intellectual artist, and I'm actually preparing a body of work. And I usually do the poor man copyright. We do send it to ourselves.
Very effective. Very effective.
And what I'm inquiring about right now is how do I, as an artist, go about contacting you, and is it necessary for me to copyright, say, 12 song material here in Cayman through your organization, and provide me the info how to reach you guys? Thank you.
Okay, so music, copyright. Okay.
So for copyright protection, it's automatic, actually. So you don't need to come to SIPO to register or to get that copyright recognized. It's an automatic right from the moment you have put those songs into some recording, or even if you just have a copy of it on your phone. As long as you've taken it from your head and put it down into some tangible format, it's already protected. So you already have the protection in the Cayman Islands. And under our legislation currently, we also recognize, we have reciprocal copyright recognition, which means that for, I think it's about 180 countries, your work produced here is also going to be recognized and copyright protected in those countries through the Berne Convention. So you already have that protection in place. You can, like you said, mail a copy to yourself just to have as evidence if you ever need to in court for enforcement purposes, or some persons have chosen to take the route of going to an attorney and depositing a copy with their attorney so that the attorney can have a copy if there's any need for enforcement. But again, the copyright protection is automatic, so you're already covered. In terms of how to contact us, we do have a website, which is ciipo.gov.ky, and an email address, info@ciipo.gov.ky. If you send us a message, we have about 4 persons ready to respond to you.
Important. He can use it. But he recognizes the importance of, protecting his effort, his work.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at a quick comment from someone that talked about, trying to enforce the collection of royalties as well when it comes to music. But
that's also coming.
Yeah.
We're actually in conversation with 2 organizations that would set up shop here in Cayman. They would give the artists the opportunity to register with them, and then they would go about collecting the royalties for it.
And I think it's, as you said, not only in its infancy, but maybe as a jurisdiction for its people to start to appreciate that there is a machinery in place for them to not only be protected, but to be encouraged and nurtured as they develop, their own skill sets in that sense.
Yeah, I think people are becoming more aware that we're not just isolated spot in the middle of nowhere, and that what you have is not of any value. I think that's changing, but we still need to keep the message going that people recognize that, this is my idea. It does have some value, and I need to look after it. I need to protect it.
What is encouraging, and I know, looking at students, whether they're university, but high school students in particular, as I talk to them, they're exposed and sort of quickly, sort of willingly go to these devices, but they're creating things and they see the importance of it, and they are starting to understand, well, I want this now to be mine. Whether they put it out there free for people to use, but at the very least they want to be recognized as the developer, the creator, the first to put it there.
That's why I was going to add that you just think in the context of society today. Once ago, it was with the Industrial Revolution, it was about machines and creating machines and building machines, and that was where the wealth was. But now today, the wealth is in intangible things. It's in computer databases. It's in trademarks. It's in songs. It's things that you don't necessarily touch, but you use. And that's what intellectual property protects. It protects these intangible things so that you can still make your money from that student that has created an app. That's an intangible asset that is protected by intellectual property rights. And by harnessing those intellectual property rights, you then can get your royalties or your payment for it. So that's the important thing to remember, that it's protecting so that you can, it's just like I go to work every day and I get paid for my services. It's you creating that work and getting paid for it.
Yeah. And I think one thing as well, too, Dwayne, you mentioned that, high school students doing these things. The other thing here that they have to keep should be conscious of, there's golden opportunities within that industry to work, not just to create, but to work.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that certain firms have beefed up their number of persons because of the new regime. We ourselves had just hired additional staff members to work in SIPO, and we're about to hire, do another hire, because it's just expanding. So it's not just within government, it's into the wider workforce or the wider industry as well, that these opportunities will come up. And it'll be great to see Caymanians and leaving high school and saying, I want to get into intellectual property, I want to be an examiner, I want to do this, that would, once we reach there and people start aspiring to that, we've arrived.
Yeah. And we've seen some cases that almost span the globe where one big company is trying to, assume that this is their thing that's being challenged by another big company. You hear just the amount of money that's expended to defend this thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It goes around. And the other thing which is interesting, and I've probably said it on here before, but myself and Candice attended some training back in the UK, PO in Wales, a couple of years ago. And what was interesting, that I think there were about 4 people in their office of 1,100, 3 or 4 people. They were the only person of any legal background. Everybody else was trained. So some people have the notion that you have to have a legal background in order to be an examiner. that's far from it. You know, I don't say it wouldn't help, but you know, when you get an office of 1,100 people and it's minuscule who has that legal, the other ones have just come up through training and just having the knack for it.
Well, I'm glad that you referenced that,
it up.
Because hopefully it will say to our populace, or young people in particular, that you can still get a law degree, you can still go, pursue sciences or finance or other aspects, but you don't have to follow the traditional path. Right. The law degree, whether you're called to as an attorney or not, you can still put that into practice, no pun, by being part of, maybe the IP office, maybe in another aspect.
I was just thinking about what you said about scientists. A lot of people don't know that as a scientist you can go be a patent examiner because it's a skill that's necessary in order to examine the inventions that come in. So if you're an engineer or a chemist or a biologist, those persons can function as patent examiners, and that's another intellectual property career right there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I always enjoy, but I'm always conscious, Mr. Donnie, especially, you've got a lot on your table now. We can end it now, or we can come back. You tell me. So, because I know you were saying, I have enough for you now.
No, we can hang around a bit. Yeah, we can hang around a bit.
See, when you're charming and you twist the arm, no, that's kidding. Oh man! We're gonna pause. When we come back, we'll just recap, remind you of the 1 year anniversary. Maybe cut some cake. I don't know. I got a candle.
We'll order it.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll talk today.
Hi, I'm remodeling our bathroom. I have a few questions.
Sure.
What are some ideas to make my bathroom feel larger? How do I know if I'm picking the right vanity? How do I choose a new toilet or a new countertop? Also, the lighting is terrible. Can I put a window or a skylight? And do I really need an exhaust fan?
You've come to the right place. At Brand Source, we custom design kitchen and baths, and our talented design team can help answer your questions. Whether you're looking for a modern, functional family bathroom or a luxurious personal retreat, we'll help create that beautiful space that makes your home yours. And if you're in a rush for a new look and have a limited budget, our ready-to-install bathroom vanities, built with solid wood and countertops of the finest materials, are a quick and easy remodeling solution.
For the very best in custom-designed kitchens and baths, visit Brand Source Home Gallery on Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park, Cayman's new kitchen and bath center.
Chamber members believe that a good education can change lives. That's why many chamber businesses fund scholarships, provide internships, and volunteer in the classroom. It's time to be recognized. Submit your education initiative and demonstrate why investing in education matters. Visit businessexcellenceawards.ky for details. The Chamber's Business Excellence Awards are proudly supported by Caribbean Alliance Insurance Company, Cox Lumber, and Deloitte.
Advance Automotive is celebrating 10 years as Cayman's authorized Chevrolet dealer and is giving away $10,000 to one lucky customer to celebrate. Buy any new Chevrolet from Advance Automotive and you'll be entered to win $10,000 cash. Entries close 1st of December or after 100 cars sold, whichever comes first. Buy your new dream car and enter to win $10,000 cash for Advance Automotive's 10th birthday. Visit the showroom on Owen Roberts Drive or visit AdvanceChevrolet.com for more details today.
The Kirk Freeport Clearance Center is now open. Kirk Freeport needs to make space for new season merchandise and is offering clearance discount pricing on a wide range of china, crystal, jewelry, watches, and accessories in a brand new clearance store. Located in the Town Center Plaza next to Burger King in downtown Georgetown, new stock will be added all the time, giving you a brand new clearance store to shop every week. The Kirk Freeport Clearance Store is open in Georgetown now. Outrageous discounts with new stock all the time. Get down early and often to avoid missing out.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us. And again, a special thanks for the opportunity to speak to Mr. Donna Dixon and Ms. Candice Westby as we talk about the 1 year anniversary of our IP legislation. And, to see sometimes where people can openly recognize that through the action and initiative of government, whether it's legislation, regulation, or even expending money to fund an office or to do something, that it bears dividends, that there was a need and a service that they've meeting and it's being well received. We knew this would work.
Yes.
Perhaps, as you said, Mr. Dixon, at the outset, perhaps not as quickly, as it has. But if you don't mind, I think it's a testament to to the whole team, but to you and Ms. Candice in particular, that acumen, the professionalism, but also the customer-oriented service that I hear you guys provide, man. So, congrats, man. Makes us look good.
Yeah, thank you. And we certainly want by no means miss our colleagues in the industry outside. There's a couple of those that were really instrumental in helping us get the right legislation in place.
And they benefit too.
Yeah,
the economic benefits.
Yeah, and they do, and they they made sure that things were right, and they were good guidance, good work. They put a lot of hours in, to make sure that we got it up.
Something that you referenced earlier, and just then, and it's always, when I look at things, it's good to have something, but there needs to be, a consequence or an enforcement or something just to ensure not always the stick, but I always say, why have a chocolate cake if you're not going to share it? So stay there. You can take a picture, but you can't eat that. Yeah. So we know in the past that there wasn't, prior to the legislation, much protection. We now have to protect our intellectual property. But in case something is impinged or
infringed,
I didn't want to even put it, but somewhat of this. Deliberately or otherwise, doesn't matter. What's the consequence?
Yeah, I'll let Candice speak to that, because we're in the sense of penalties and where they can go, but we do have some enforcement measures in place, and it is covered within the law and the regs, but. I'll let Candice explain that a little bit deeper.
Thanks.
So, infringement is both a criminal offense and there are civil remedies available. Depending on what the proprietor wants to take, then that's the route you would take. In some instances, it may be a matter so grave that we have to criminally charge as well as deliver up profits, for example. A lot of the times people are not aware that the counterfeit market is huge, and anything that can be counterfeited is counterfeited. And a lot of the times these counterfeiters use the funds from this business in order to fund other criminal enterprises, buy guns, sell drugs, and so on. Yeah. So in those instances, a lot of the time you would find that these persons are also held criminally responsible, as well as having to deliver up the profits. The profit side of it is the civil remedies available under the law, and then we have criminal offenses that can have you end up in jail or pay a fine. And infringement occurs basically when a person uses your intellectual property without your permission. That's the basics of it. Once they use your trademark or play your music, perform your song without your permission, that is an infringement.
Okay. Now, the criminal and the civil. Criminal would be sort of for the government agency to advance that.
Right.
Yes. But the civil, the
proprietor would take that action, yes. Most times, intellectual property infringement ends in civil suit, because it's just, that's the way to recoup your profits from whatever
you want compensation for the loss, you want an injunction to stop them from doing it.
Yes.
But not always easy.
No.
We hear like knockoffs, for instance, and there's another word some students introduced me to the other day, and I'm trying to remember it. But it's not knockoff, it's a copy, a fake of it, but I thought, that's a word. But they know these things, right? Yeah. They know it's a rip-off or whatever it is. Yeah. And yet that is prevalent, whether it's some sort of designer thing or another.
Yeah, and the other thing to do in terms of enforcement, when the new regime came into place, the enforcement agencies that would be responsible for carrying out these things, it's all new to them. So we've recently been doing courses or training, and we just recently done one with Customs, who's on our courses, one of the agencies on the front line. And so all of these agencies are now becoming more aware and trying to find out what their responsibilities are under the new law. And it's heartening to know that they're on board with us. They're doing things. We also have the trade officers in DCI who is on the ground. They're after the fact, internal, and we've also done training with them. And we've taken it a step further. We reached out to the international community, to Inter, and through them we were able to secure proper enforcement training from the Department of Justice and Homeland Security in the U.S. And we have officers from Cayman that'll be going to that. And Cayman not being mean people, we decided to include our colleagues around the region in the same training. So we actually got them to accept not just Cayman, but also extend an invitation to several of our colleagues around the region. So it's more a consolidated effort, within the region to try to make sure that people's rights are protected.
Amenable, accommodating.
Yeah, Cayman kind.
Sometimes get kicked in the teeth for it, but it's important because it protects, everyone.
Right.
We had a quick question that just popped in here. I worded it a little bit different. The gist of the question is asking in relation to, copyright protection and the sale of, I don't know what else, pirate videos and the like. I don't think I need to go into all the particulars, but is that something that is illegal now because of legislation? How is it being enforced? Is it being enforced? I'll share the rest of it off here with you, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, it is, and if persons look around, they realize that there's not as many tape clubs around as there were before, because we made people aware that it is illegal. And they could get in serious, trouble for it. So a lot of the tape clubs have disappeared from the foresight. And funnily enough, we were at a training the other day, and we were told that there's one more that's existing in a certain district in a certain area. Now that would be a DCI job to go and advise those people that they need to cease and desist if they're selling knockoff stuff.
Pirated, yeah.
So
again, sometimes people don't probably realize something. They may think, well, geez, we're in this little smaller place, but some of this is significant revenue that's being lost, and we see significant efforts on the part of some associations and governments and like to make sure. Because lost revenue to means lost taxes,
right? And it affects the jurisdiction reputation on a larger scale. If you look at the television broadcast, for instance, there are certain devices that you can purchase that can receive pirated signals. That's illegal, And we attended a workshop as well at INTA about the same thing, and I was amazed at the different type of devices that's available around the world. It's not just in Cayman now. This is a global thing, But we got to be conscious of the fact that if government allow those things to persist without some form of check or some sort of control, then it really affects our reputation as a whole.
I mean, there's even some instances I'm told someone will go to a particular jurisdiction to buy something that is legally available to be sold at that jurisdiction, but it only can be used or consumed. Yes, you can take it out and maybe use it, but
you shouldn't distribute it. Right. You shouldn't make copies and distribute.
And there's so many other things that we don't always. It's a challenge, but I thank you for joining us. And as we close out, Mr. Dixon, any final sort of comments for today?
No, I just want to say thanks again for having us. We were certainly glad, and we would want to just encourage the public that that little idea or that little drawing or that little word that you made that you think is insignificant, think again, and weigh your options. And SIPO is there. People can contact us. They don't have to go to an agent to come to us to get information. We happily provide that to them, and they can reach our website as is sipo.gov.ky, and the email is sipo at info@sipo.ky.
Two I's.
Yeah, CIIPO.
Yeah.
I joked earlier about it, but maybe people would say, I know he joked about it. What is that called? And they might start remembering. Hey, you never know. If they call it something else, then blame me. But I'm really grateful to, document that you guys demonstrate that wonderful element of customer service that you exude. It makes us as a civil service proud, but as a country and a jurisdiction, a much better position. So, to you and the entire team, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to having you on again, not just for the second anniversary, but between now and then, any other sort of aspects that we can help to inform and advise, or even seek input from our public.
We right next door, so hop, skip, and a jump.
Hop, skip, and jump?
Yeah.
I don't know. Susan, would you be up to hop, skipping, and jumping? She says so. If she says so, is it okay, no?
Okay.
But we'll come only if you have chocolate.
Okay.
All right, we're going to pause and take a quick break, pick up our headline news, but when we come back, there's some draft legislation out there, and the public's been asked for some of their input. The healthcare decisions bill, I'm told. Interested to hear what that's going to be about. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman. Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
Senior immigration officer Garfield Gary Wang has been found guilty of careless driving and leaving the scene of an accident. Mr. Wang was found not guilty of the more serious charge, driving under the influence of alcohol. The verdict was returned earlier today. Sentencing will take place in September. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. U.S. President Donald Trump's ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen, is said to be more than happy to speak to the inquiry into alleged collusion with Russia. Cohen pleaded guilty on Tuesday to violating finance laws during the 2016 presidential election by handling hush money for Mr. Trump's alleged lovers. Europe's biggest illegal turtle and tortoise farm has been shut down on the Spanish island of Majorca. Civil Guard officers say they rescued 1,100 animals from a farm near Jucmajor in the south of the island, many of them endangered. The protected species were reportedly kept in poor conditions on the site. And Trinidad has been rocked by the 7.3 magnitude earthquake which struck Venezuela, and authorities are anticipating more tremors with aftershocks already recorded. The 7.3 magnitude earthquake in Venezuela last night was felt as far north as Dominica, as far west as Colombia, and as far south as Guyana. The University of the West Indies, UWI, issued a warning for aftershocks following the 92nd quake, which is the largest to strike Venezuela since 1900. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands. What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Nursing, education, social work, media studies, hospitality, electrical, plumbing, AC. Wow, I didn't even know that the University College of the Cayman Islands offered all that.
Yes, all that and more, as well as event management and QuickBooks. They also did customized training for our staff last month. Hey, didn't your son just graduate from high school? Take him so he can apply for the fall semester.
Pursue your academic and professional goals at UCCI. Admissions are ongoing. Classes start August 27th. Visit them or call 623-8224 to learn more.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we promised earlier, I think Miss Susan says there's Kung Stew on lunch. Oh, no, sorry. That was another discussion. I'm just kidding. Now that I have your attention, please join us as we welcome to the studio Chief Officer, Ms. Jennifer Ahern, together with our Senior Policy Advisor, Ms. Janet Flynn, and the Minister of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing.
That's right.
I always forget the housing part, under the leadership of the Honorable Dwayne S. Seymour.
That's right. Yes, Minister Seymour is our minister, and we affectionately refer to our ministry as the Ministry of Heck.
I almost was tempted, but thank you for saying that, because a friend said to me, what the heck?
That's right.
No, but it is really, really encouraging to see some of the legislation that we're advancing, that we're seeking the public's input, so that as they get an appreciation of what we're looking at, help to inform, but not just advance the society, but for those of us who have, even just recently traversed that road, how much easier it would have been had some of this thing been on in the cards way back then. Now, healthcare decisions bill. Ms. Jen, give us a sort of an insight into first off, what are we talking about, in this?
Okay. Well, thanks so much for having us on this afternoon, and we're very excited to be out for public comment on the Healthcare Decisions Bill. The Healthcare Decisions Bill is proposed to put in place a framework to allow for people, if they wish to have an advance directive, which basically is something that outlines what your wishes are for your health care should you become unable to express or make those decisions yourself. So this came out of some conversations that we had. The healthcare conference back in 2015, the theme was embracing emerging trends. And one of the tracks that we had some speakers on was end of life and palliative care. We have the incredible fortune here of having a very good hospice care service that's provided, and some of the speakers that came down talked about how we need to start having these conversations with our loved ones. They're difficult conversations about our end-of-life care choices. But one of the things that came to light through that is that we lacked the legislative framework to honor these advance directives. So even if you wanted to write down and discuss with your family that, these are my wishes. If I become incapacitated, either you might want to, say there's certain care you don't want, or you might want to make sure that everybody understands that you expect everything possible to be done. But the situation that we have now without this legislation is that the healthcare providers aren't always in a position to be able to honor those wishes because it doesn't have legal standing. And they often find that the next of kin sometimes have different views in terms of what they want done for their family member. So the legislation is called the Healthcare Decisions Bill, and it is to put in place a legal framework to allow for those types of advance directives to be created, for healthcare proxies to be appointed and recognized, and also just to put in place some provisions to make sure there's appropriate checks and balances in place as well.
And we see, many times in that case, the motive aspect, families want that loved one to have the very best, and you're not always, with greatest respect, you're not always as, sound, right-minded, or what have you, thinking logically, because all you're seeing is that loved one and the particular circumstance, and all you can think of is, if only I could, I just want it.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
That's right. You want them to be with you as long as possible. Yes. That's right.
No, with these advanced directives, and to go about making them, as you help us to understand in the public, we can see the importance of it, but then potentially maybe some of the challenges that could face. When would it kick in, and would it be now when the person is, very healthy, no sign of any illness? I mean, when should we even consider it?
Well, this is not a piece of legislation for older persons or people who we consider old, or even just anyone who is suffering from any kind of disease. It's basically once you turn 18, you can make that application or fill the form, complete the form, right? So that's the minimum age in order to complete the forms.
Okay.
And the advance directive doesn't come into effect until you're incapacitated. So as long as you're able to make the decisions and communicate the decisions for yourself, the advance directive doesn't come into play. The advance directive is there to provide guidance to the healthcare providers in the event that you become unconscious and not able to respond, or are incapacitated in your ability to respond. But the point that Janet made about this isn't just for older persons or people who are anticipating their demise is a really important one. There are lots of situations where an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old might end up, one example we talk about is a motor vehicle accident. And it could happen to any of us anytime. You end up in the hospital, you're in the emergency room, you're unconscious, you're not able to communicate your wishes. If you have that advance directive in place and that you've discussed it with your family members, and we'll talk a bit about the process behind it, then your family and the healthcare providers know what you want, what your wishes are. And you mentioned how difficult a time this can be. I mean, can you imagine? You're there, your family is there, and their first reaction might be like, you have to do something, even though you know they know that that's not what your wishes were. Having the advance directive in place takes that out of the equation. It makes it so much easier for the family to, at that incredibly difficult time, to have those decisions already made, already been discussed, already understood.
I think too, and I sit there just in preparing for this discussion and looking at things. We know it's a challenging time. It's something that we all, because we think we're prudent, logical, rational, and reasonable, want to make it as easy for our family. But we don't necessarily always want to do it because maybe of superstition, maybe just that, let me procrastinate a little bit longer. But it does, from what I gather, just like planning your own funeral now, make it easier, for your family to sort of at least deal with that aspect of it. If I may ask, though, can we quickly just revisit what obtains now? So something happens to someone, the family, let's go on the premise that there's no dispute over the family, everybody agrees that let's do the very best. But how does that work? I mean, is it just for the physician? Is it a nominated member of the family to say, well, you know what, we're going to do this, whether this means start the terminating process or it means, full speed ahead, let's do everything to revive and save the person? Or is it for the physician and the caregiver to say, okay, we're sorry, but this is what's going to happen? In Cayman jurisdiction, what is the law now? What is the practice? What happens now?
So the practice right now is that the next of kin will be there to work with the physician, the attending physician. The attending physicians will make their care recommendations based on the best interest of the patient, but also, there are some situations where the physician would look to the family member to say, do you want us to resuscitate them or not? Do you want them to be intubated or not? And, and the difficulty now, and some of the stories that were relayed to us through the discussions around the drafting and the preparation for this legislation, is that sometimes the patient who is now unconscious, has said, I don't want to be resuscitated. I don't want to be ventilated. I don't want any artificial feeding tubes inserted in my body. However, when the patient becomes unconscious, the family member is then in a position to say, no, you have to do those things. We want you to do those things. And the physician is then put in the position where they will do them because the family members, it's not contrary to the best interest of the patient per se. So that's a difficult situation that we have now, is that, as we were saying before, even if you've had the discussion with your family and you've expressed, what you want, even if you put it down in writing, at the time that you become incapacitated, your next of kin becomes by default, the person who makes those decisions, and there's no way for your wishes to be honored. And the physicians are in a difficult situation.
We know that in some jurisdictions, it's a DNR, do not resuscitate. They have those, and then there are other, similar to these advance directives, things that are set up, and that is what is expected to follow. This would then be similar to that.
Yes,
you have this. So this would be a legally binding document. We'll talk about the process in order to get it on. One of the things that, if we could ask, we look at the survivors or the next of kin. Maybe it's the spouse, maybe it's parents, maybe it's sibling, maybe it's the offspring. How is that determined? Would the legislation speak to that? Because sometimes that can become an issue as to who it is that we're looking to with the legal right to determine. I'm the parent of the child, but the child is an adult and the child is nominated somebody else. Can we talk about that? I think, Ms. Susan, we have that first break. Good company, but sometimes you got to give the company a break to be able to catch their breath and say, all right, when we come back, we'll ask more about that, and we thank you so much for sharing with us. So please, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Congratulations, it's a boy.
During the greatest events of your life, whether or not you have the right health insurance coverage should be the last thing on your mind. That's why at Fidelity Health, we are committed to helping you get matched with the right plan to suit you and your family. We offer a range of plans to suit your budget, plus access to a network of quality care throughout the Caribbean and the USA. You can relax and enjoy life's greatest moments when you are covered with Fidelity Health. Call us today at 949-7822 for a free quote.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
Hi, I'm thinking of buying a car from the States. Which port do you ship out of?
Hi, we ship out of Miami, Houston, and Brooklyn. Just let us know your port of choice and we can provide you with a quotation and answer any questions you may have on insuring and protecting your vehicle during its journey.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
Place household garbage in large bags prior to its placement in a garbage container to avoid spillage during collection. A suitable garbage container must be made of sturdy materials that will allow it to withstand weathering. A tightly fitted cover is also necessary to keep out water and stray animals. Do your part. Keep your surroundings clean. Store household garbage in a suitable garbage container. For more tips on proper waste packaging, please visit DEH website at www.deh.gov.ky.
Babe, not tonight. I need to be rested for all-day meetings tomorrow.
What are you talking about? I was almost asleep.
You keep poking me, and I can't sleep.
That's the mattress spring I keep telling you about. Not me. We really need to get a new mattress.
Tossing and turning, back hurting, can't sleep? It might be time to turn in your old mattress and go to bed with a new one. Browse the huge mattress showroom at Brand Source Home Gallery and pick the perfect mattress today. With mattresses to suit every budget, Brand Source Home Gallery stocks a wide selection of sizes and styles like Pillow Top and gel memory foam. So stop tossing and turning and sleep better tonight with a new mattress from Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we invite you to perhaps not just listen and learn, but contribute. We offer you an opportunity to call us at 949-8037. Likewise, you can call us toll-free, 1-800-534-8255. Either way, I say to you that wonderful, competent, pleasant, very, excellent voice of Miss Susan will be the one answering the phone. So you just call just to say hello to her. That'll be the highlight of your day, I promise you. In the studio, we have Miss Jennifer Yarn, our Chief Officer, together with Miss Janet Flynn, the Senior Policy Advisor in the Ministry of Health, as we talk about the Healthcare Decisions Bill. Now, just to quickly ask, there's a consultation period out now. Started when? How long does it go to? Because there's always a timeline. I keep telling people, time doesn't stop.
No.
So yes, we had to put a cutoff point to it. So technically, or basically, the consultation period started in August, at the beginning of August, and it goes on till the 30th of September. And we have on the website, the Minister's website, the consultation draft. We have a frequently asked questions and also the press release. So comments can be sent to myself, Janet.Flynn at gov.ky, or I can be contacted at 244-2374. We ask everyone to comment, whether it's for or against, just sending your comments, because that will form the basis of the consultation report in our next step to go to caucus.
Yeah, we want people to, take a look at the legislation, take a look at the frequently asked questions, and let us know, do they think we've missed anything out? Do they think that there's some provisions in there that they'd rather not see in there? And one thing we'd like to especially draw people's attention to is in the schedule. The schedule of the draft bill is the forms that you would use if you chose to have an advance directive. And we'd really like people to take a look at those forms and let us know, do you think you would understand how to fill those out? Is there a section that you expected to see there that you don't, or vice versa? Because Janet and the task force that we had working on this, we've been working on it now for a year, and it all makes perfect sense to us. We now need the public to take a look and let us know what they think. And the feedback that we get, we'll put together in a consultation report. We'll see if there's any changes we need to make to the legislation. We'll make those changes, and then we'll send that all up to Cabinet for their final consideration as to whether or not we proceed.
I think that people say, it's your job to know, but even if it wasn't, the frequent asked questions are very informative. The information that's provided on the website isn't necessarily exhaustive, but isn't exhausting to read either. But we want to have until the end of September to sort of look at it and decide if we want to comment. Today is the end of August, almost. So, as my mother would say, 2 turnarounds and it'll be Christmas, right?
37 days to go.
Yeah. Oh, she counted how many minutes, Mom?
37 days, just about.
Yeah, so I would say that it's not going to take long. Now, we certainly want to maybe ask some of the questions and get it out. But if I could ask or share, and reviewing it, I had someone say to me, well, we understand this is in relation to your health, but sometimes in that aspect, when a person potentially is incapacitated or like, there are also financial decisions that have to be made. Is this any provision within this legislation, proposed legislation, or a companion legislation that would help with that? I know the answer, but let's...
This legislation is strictly focused on healthcare decisions. And there is a provision in the legislation to appoint a proxy, but that is strictly regarding your healthcare decisions and it's not a financial power of attorney or any of those other things. It's just strictly healthcare.
And as you shared about, looks clear to you and exhausted. One individual said, but when you think of financial decisions from the health insurance and how it's to be expended, money to other things, it takes money sometimes, even with the best healthcare, 100% coverage, whatever. Are you allowed to spend the person's money? That requires something separate. So as people thinking about it, be cognizant of that as well, right, Ms. Janet?
Correct. It's only about your healthcare, as Jennifer said, nothing else.
Okay. Now, we were sharing earlier that you have to be the age of majority, which is 18 in this jurisdiction. You can make it, but some people say, well, I've went to church once, so does that mean that I'll always go to church? Or once saved, obviously. If you make it, can you change it? Can you revoke it and cancel it? Can you amend it? How does that work?
Absolutely. You can revoke it. There's a provision in the legislation or in the proposed bill that you can revoke it. You can amend it at any time.
Okay.
And in the same vein that you have to do it in front of a witness and have it signed, it's the same way you would do it for revocation. Yeah.
Okay. And
Dwayne,
yes, ma'am.
things can change. You might make it, and then things change. New technology, medicine advances, that kind of a thing, treatment, and you might say, well, things are so advanced now, then I'd like to change it. Yeah, so
your personal,
it allows for that, or even your own personal,
your personal
state.
beliefs might change as well.
Yeah.
You might go from feeling that you absolutely don't want any
Strong
interventions
views,
at all. And then, with the passage of time and a couple of children and a few other things, you might say, well, actually, maybe it would be okay if we did this, but not that. So, it's not meant to be, once and then engraved in stone. No. You have the ability after you've made the advance directive to change it, amend it, revoke it. And, another thing I think it's worth pointing out is that this is an option for people.
Okay.
Nothing in here is making it compulsory. It's not going to say that everybody in the Cayman Islands must have an advance directive. Not at all. It's really just about creating that opportunity or that option for people who wish to do so to have this done. But as Janet was saying earlier, even if you don't choose to put it down on paper, we really want to encourage everyone to start having those conversations with their family members. It's not a conversation you want to have. It's a difficult conversation to talk about our mortality and to talk about if something bad were to happen to me, I would like you to make sure that, and we were on the other morning and I was talking about it with my grandmother, and she pulled us all aside at different times after she, when she was about 90 years old, and made sure that we all knew what she wanted with her funeral and with her care. And we were all like, Nana, come on, we don't want to talk about this. Sure enough, when the time came, she had a stroke, she was incapacitated. But because we'd had those conversations with her as a family, we knew what her wishes were. It made an incredibly awful time that much easier. Yeah. And we also knew that we were doing what she wanted. And we only knew what she wanted because she'd had those conversations with us. So it's difficult, and it's not something we necessarily want to face, but it's important.
I think to making sort of that a decision now, when you're able to make it, very much aware of everything. There's no question that the person wasn't cognizant, and the family can have it. And you have that ongoing dialogue. Just like I think many of us should have a will, but we don't. And like a will, we can amend it as we want, as often as we want, provided we do it in the proper way. That latest will is going to be the most effective, are going to be the one that the court's going to recognize. But now, with this process, some people, maybe like a will, put off doing it because there's a perceived financial cost. It could be expensive. It could be this difficult. If someone wanted to have an advance directive, is it expensive?
No, there's no cost.
Yeah.
Absolutely no cost. I would say start the conversations with your family first and your physician as well, so that the appropriate discussions take place. But the forms would be available at the health centers if and when the bill is passed, and I'm sure the forms would be available where they are accessible to members of the public.
Yeah. I believe as an example for a will, if the person witnessing a will can't be one of the beneficiaries or the like. So in this instance, are there requirements for witnessing and who can witness, how it should be done? Can I just send a text message and hey, anybody reading this is what I want. How do we go about it?
Yeah. No, you can't do it that way, Dwayne, unfortunately. It might be the easier way to go, but no.
No, okay.
So you need a medical doctor who should be one of two witnesses.
Okay.
And then someone else who is neither your proxy nor a beneficiary.
So that
to witness
independent,
that form
objective part.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And make sure, the doctor ensures that you're mentally competent in terms of your state of mind, and also you weren't coerced or under any duress or forced, or you understand exactly what you are getting into or what you're doing.
Yeah, we have the physician on there because it allows for you to have the discussion with the physician regarding making sure you understand what it is that you are saying you do or don't want, and the physician to certify that they believe, as Janet said, that you're of sound mind, you haven't been coerced into doing this, you're doing this of your own free will, and that you do understand, you have an understanding of what you're putting down.
All right, we have a comment off here that is asking, in this age of technology, we're talking about having it written, but the question is, well, what if have a video recording of it? Could that be evidence of the person's wishes, or does it have to be only in writing? Because
as the legislation is currently drafted, it needs to be in writing, and it needs to be witnessed by the two witnesses, as we said, a physician and then somebody who's not a beneficiary.
Okay. Now those proxies that we refer to, any restrictions, limitations on who they are? Presumably age of majority as well, but they could be family members, it could be your attorney, it could be your business partner, it could be, whomever,
It basically anybody that you believe understands what your wishes are and that you're confident that they will act in accordance with your wishes in the event that you become incapacitated.
Okay, and that proxy would be the person that would say, Johnny here wanted this in this instance. It's bona fide, there's no question. Not to make it difficult, but what if that individual, let's say it's the family attorney, for argument's sake, or the bank president, someone that seems to be not connected to the person other than in a professional capacity, not the spouse, not the sibling, not the offspring, but the offspring says, well, no, we don't want that, we want this. With this advance directive, which one holds sway?
So the proxy's role, if you have a proxy, you will have an advance directive.
Right.
The proxy's role will be that if there's a question regarding something that's in your advance directive, if there's something that wasn't addressed in your advance directive, they would be looked to. So it's not a situation where if you've gotten a proxy, then they would ignore your advance directive and just listen to the proxy. The advance directive would be the governing document. The proxy would be there. One of the roles of the proxy is to make sure that your advance directive is being adhered to as much as possible. There will be some circumstances that the physician, one of the governing principles behind the advance directives is that the physician must always act in the patient's best interest. So there may be times, depending on the circumstances, where the physician is not in a position to honor something in your advance directive because it's not in the patient's best interest. So, in those situations, that's where the proxy might be brought to bear to, have the discussion and be able to say, yes, well, what Janet meant when she put that in her advance directive was this, and I know that because we talked about it, and I'm confident that what you're proposing to do would be fine.
So that advance directive then would sort of overrule whatever wishes of any family member, because the person was deemed competent. It was,
because the proxy's decision must reflect the decision of the directive makers. Yeah.
All right. We've got a quick break to take. When we come back, can we ask, because we know other jurisdictions, these things or similar things already exist. Would they be valid and recognized here? If so, is there a process like go through the courts or the chief medical officer, or do we just post it on a notice board? I don't know. Hey, sometimes got to ask these questions. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Entrepreneurs are risk takers and innovators. They see opportunity where others see roadblocks and defeat. They introduce new products and services that disrupt conventional thinking and trends. Are you one of these innovators in our community? It's time to receive the recognition that you deserve. Apply today for the Chamber's Entrepreneur of the Year Award at businessexcellenceawards.ky. This award is proudly supported by Yellow Media Group.
Hey, are those new glasses on Will?
Yeah, we went to Optical Outlook. Wham, bam, easy exam. Finally, an exam he could pass. And we had the glasses the next day. Easiest part of our back-to-school shopping for sure.
Book your child's exam today at Optical Outlook. Call 746-2020. Save 50% off a complete pair of glasses with any student eye exam. From now until August 31st. Come see the difference with Optical Outlook. Located in the Caymanian Village. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. RC Fusion featuring Billboard's pop hit songs and more from the 70s to the 90s.
RC Fusion.
Weekdays from 10 a.m. till 12. RC Fusion, brought to you by Merengue Town. Take a walk on the wild side. It's time to feel the rhythm. Time to feel the vibes. It's time for Merengue Town. RC Fusion.
RC Fusion.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecasts, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman, 89.9 FM.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us as we have a continuing conversation with Chief Officer Jennifer Ahern and the Senior Policy Advisor in the Ministry of Health, Ms. Janet Flynn, as we talk about the Healthcare Decisions Bill. If you're just joining us, certainly want you to call and share your thoughts. Maybe just listen, learn, and if you have a question to ask, well, a comment to make, 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Could I, as we continue, maybe just quickly ask you, recap? This Healthcare Decisions Bill, what is it? Some people are just getting out of the car, some are just getting in. I don't know, maybe it's good to recap. Miss Mom always reminds me, half your point.
Thanks. Well, so the Healthcare Decisions Bill is, we're out for public comment. It's a draft bill, and the bill is to put in place a framework to allow for advance directives regarding healthcare. So an advance directive, people may have heard about a DNR, or do not resuscitate orders. Basically, it's an opportunity for people to put down in writing, after discussions with family members and physicians, what their wishes are for their care should they become incapacitated. and not able to make those or communicate those decisions for themselves. And the advance directive could say that you want, very limited interventions, or it could outline that you want the maximum possible interventions in the event that it becomes active. The law also is proposing to allow for the appointment of healthcare proxies who would be able to act on your behalf in the event that you are incapacitated, and they would be doing that in accordance with the wishes that you've outlined in your advance directive and in your discussions with your proxy. And basically, it's just to address a gap that came to our attention regarding the fact that as it stands right now in the Cayman Islands, even if you have put down your end-of-life care preferences, you've discussed them with your family and friends and your physician, the physicians aren't always in a position to be able to honor them. They don't have the legal protection. The next of kin can override your wishes once you become incapacitated. So this is just a proposed bill to put in place a framework to create the opportunity for people to have these advance directives.
Like in sort of probate, and like there's a succession in terms of who next of kin is. In this, is there to be a similar sort of structural lineage, or how would that work?
So in the legislation, it makes reference to your nearest relative, and Janet's got it open, so I'll let her read.
Thank you, Ms. Janet.
So,
and now, Janet.
The definition of nearest relative in the proposed bill states, of a directive maker means a person most closely connected to the directive maker, using the following order of relationships with the directive maker. And if there is more than one of any type, priority should be given to the most senior in age of that type. So it begins with spouse, partner, children, parents, siblings, grandparents, grandchildren, uncle or aunt, nephew or niece, close friend, the mental health professional treating the directive maker, a social worker or probation officer employed in that capacity in government or a statutory body, or, finally, the attorney, an attorney. So you see, it's a whole slew of persons falling under the category of nearest relative.
Spouse or partner.
Or partner.
Prior and then parent. Or
spouse, partner, children.
Right.
Parents,
so that partner,
that.
And the reason why when I look at the legislation or the proposed legislation, that partner, even though they're not legally married, in a sense, has ranks and priority over the children. Right?
Yes.
And above the parents.
And above the parents, as is written in the bill.
I won't go into, that should be evident to other people, but something to consider why you may want certain things. Illegitimate, is that the right term these days now? So two individuals who are not married, because I know there's the inheritance law makes provision for certain things in terms of that, but two individuals who are not married who have children, whether of that union or otherwise, and those children, where would that rank in relation to decisions?
They would be children.
There's no distinction between...
No, I don't know if we've defined children. I can't remember if there's a definition of children,
but
in that, if they're offspring, recognized as children of that relationship, I think they would be.
And I think this is what you shared at the outset, that you spent a great deal of time putting this together. This is where we as the community should now look at this and see it with a fresh lens, see it with some questions. And it may not be anything that is earth-shattering, but it may be something that is a great revelation.
I know that we did define children. It was either in the mental health law or the organ, the human tissue transplant. We probably could go back and take a look and see about putting the definition in.
And there are a number of things. It's something to make it convenient for us, not just for the individual who is issued the advance directive, but for us. Because it's a challenging time,
Very, very difficult time.
Probably initially the last thing on your mind is how much it's going to cost. At some point, that probably is going to weigh into an equation whether you want it to or not. The health coverage may be an issue and otherwise. But in the first instance, wouldn't it be nice to know what a person wants?
And it's, as I was saying earlier, there is a real benefit to being able to take some comfort from the fact that you knew what the person's wishes were and that you were honoring them.
Yeah, man. Well, some of us know, some of us are unsure, and some of us will, have a go at it and then change it and then finally get it right. But what about if an individual, as we were asking earlier, has an advance directive or whatever it may be called in another jurisdiction, and they're now in Cayman, either visiting or they're living or whatever the reason is, but they have one that is a bona fide advance directive, but they now happen to be here when they mishap or however you label it. How does that come into play? Does it have any validity here?
Yes, there are provisions in the bill to recognize advance directives or their equivalent from other jurisdictions. The jurisdictions that are being proposed are the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Jamaica, the United States of America, and a member state of the EU. Those are the jurisdictions that we've included now. And the directives made in those jurisdictions would be recognized here. But the provisions of those directives that we could implement would have to be in keeping with our legislation. So questions come up on some of the other shows regarding euthanasia. And there are some jurisdictions that allow that and permit that. So that might be something in an advance directive from another country where that's lawful.
But not here.
But even if you come from that country with that provision in your advance directive, we wouldn't act on it here because this legislation expressly prohibits euthanasia. So there's a clause that says that, it's very clear, it does not allow for euthanasia. So that particular part of that person's advance directive from the other jurisdiction wouldn't be actionable here. We couldn't enforce it here. So that, the doctors would have to be guided by whatever they're allowed under law to do here.
Okay. If I may ask, and trying to do my best to be not only sensitive, but equally as informative as possible. Let's say, in instance, an individual has requested, if I'm at this stage, don't do anymore. I'll use the phrase, go ahead and pull the plug. And, the founder's okay. Now, that compared to euthanasia, where there's a deliberate act on the part of the physician to administer something that hastens the disease.
Yeah, those are the two differences.
Right. Yeah. Significant difference. So, pulling the plug, well, Ms. Jan?
So one of the things, that you might have in your advance directive is that you don't want any artificial feeding, or you don't want to be ventilated, you don't want to be resuscitated. So those would be the situations where you would withdraw, if you had been, if your family, if you've been put on those machines, but it's actually contrary to what's in your advance directive, they would withdraw that care, and which is not the same as giving you something to end your life. The outcome might in the end be the same, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah. And I appreciate us just sharing that, because I think people need to recognize there is a fundamental difference. One is, I guess it's evident. And again, it comes down to being in a position to start that conversation, with our loved ones, and don't wait until we're, 105.
No.
Maybe we do it now.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. As Janet mentioned, even, if without the legislation being in place, these are conversations we would encourage people to have with their loved ones, so that, if the time comes, at least they know what your wishes were. I think it's a great opportunity to be able to do that. It's not a comfortable discussion, and it can be a very uncomfortable and difficult thing to be talking about, but it can make all the difference in the world in a time of crisis.
Now, when we're looking at the mental competency of the individual, a physician presumably would be the one, as you shared, to make that determination. In the instance, and I was having a conversation earlier with some, trying to get a level of comfort so that I can have this discussion. It is challenging. I mean, sometimes it's like fresh wounds. The question was asked, well, someone had an accident, they're recovering, there is still some issues, but they're, how did he put it? Obviously debilitating conditions, the person still had some diminished capacity, but still very much cognizant. Even in that instance, if the physician says, no, you're aware of what's happening, then the person could still make an advance directive even though there's pre-existing issues.
Yeah,
okay.
We would depend on the physician to make that determination. Right.
Yeah. All right, well, Ms. Susan reminds us. Another break again, Ms. Susan? Okay, is this the break with the chocolate? No, sorry.
That's my favorite break.
Yeah, I keep waiting for that break, and that's how she keeps me here. She promises. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to pause and take a break. It's not a chocolate break, but it should be one. When we come back, more Talk Today. Please stay tuned.
The summer party has started, so watch out for great mobile deals and amazing free gifts from Flow. This summer, get the LTE Stream and Talk prepaid combo that suits you on the fastest 4G LTE network. Share the summer fun with a Flow Large Up combo for $19.99 with 2 gigs of data and 500 minutes to any local number. Plus, you can get free gifts from Flow, like barbecue grills, groceries, and air travel vouchers. Visit discoverflow.ky for more. Terms and conditions apply. Get your Flow prepaid combo and say, watch out, summer.
Nursing, education, social work, media studies, hospitality, electrical, plumbing, AC. Wow, I didn't even know that the University College of the Cayman Islands offered all that.
Yes, all that and more, as well as event management and QuickBooks. They also did customized training for our staff last month. Hey, didn't your son just graduate from high school? Take him so he can apply for the fall semester.
Pursue your academic and professional goals at UCCI. Admissions are ongoing. Classes start August 27th. Visit them or call 623-8224 to learn more.
From happy beginnings to happy ever after,
Brit K protects your lifestyle with the best insurance cover at the best possible price.
Health insurance with far-reaching benefits.
95% of claims settled in 5 days.
Low-cost life insurance.
And investments.
Security in retirement.
With a custodian pension plan.
For happy beginnings and a happy ever after,
visit BritK.ky or call 949-8699.
Brit K, where people come first.
The Kirk Freeport Clearance Center is now open. Kirk Freeport needs to make space for new season merchandise and is offering clearance discount pricing on a wide range of china, crystal, jewelry, watches, and accessories in a brand new clearance store. Located in the Town Center Plaza next to Burger King in downtown Georgetown, new stock will be added all the time, giving you a brand new clearance store to shop every week. The Kirk Freeport Clearance Store is open in Georgetown now. Outrageous discounts with new stock all the time. Get down early and often to avoid missing out.
Attention Breeze Fusion fans and supporters, registration is now open for the 12th annual Grand Cayman Breeze Fusion 5K Walk Run. We are calling on you to help us in raising funds for the NCBO and for the John Gray High School Musical Department. Registration is only $15 for adults if registered by September 30th. The walk run will take place on Saturday, November 3rd at the Smiths Baccadere in Grand Cayman. But you must be registered by September 30th to take advantage of the lower fee. Visit CaymanActive.com to register today or stop by Radio Cayman on Elgin Avenue.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us as we speak to Chief Officer Ms. Jennifer Hearn and our Senior Policy Advisor in the Ministry of Health, Ms. Janet Flynn, talking about the consultation draft for the Healthcare Decisions Bill. Open for public consultation until the end of September.
That's right. September 30th.
So people who want to maybe look at it specifically can go to the Ministry's website, maybe look at the bill, look at the draft legislation, the frequent asked questions, the press release. How do we access that again? W something?
W something, yes. www.ministryofhealth.gov.ky is our ministry's website. And as you said, we've got the information up there for people to download. If you want to submit comments, you can submit them either in writing to our ministry's attention at the Government Administration Building. You can email them to Janet. Her email address is janett.flynn, janetflynn@gov.ky, or you can give her a call at 244-2374 if you have any questions or if you're having any difficulty accessing the documents. So we just want to encourage everybody, please do take some time and take a look at what's being proposed and let us have your feedback.
Now, end of September, the consultation period closes. What then and at what point, all things being equal, would expect the proposed legislation, if it's still considered to be moving forward, to go, well, what would the process and give us a timeline?
So once the public consultation period closes, we'll review the feedback that we've received. We'll look and see if we need to make any amendments to the draft legislation. get those amendments made. We'll submit the consultation report, a summary of the comments, as well as the proposed version after any amendments to Cabinet for their consideration. Assuming that they're happy to proceed with it, it would then be submitted to the Legislative Assembly. It will be gazetted for a 21-day notice period prior to being debated in the Legislative Assembly. We're hoping, I don't have a schedule for the LA meetings, but we're hoping, all things being equal, that we would have it considered in early 2019.
Okay. Now, we had a question that came in that asked in relation to the organ donors legislation. How would this tie in with it? So if the person says, if I'm at this stage, let this happen, would they put that into, say, if they want to be a donor, for instance, of part, or does the two go hand in hand? Would one supersede the other? How does it play out?
Well, Dwayne, as you know, we just brought into force the human tissue transplant law. And yes, if you complete this form, you could add on it that you wanted to donate organs, but you would also have to complete the one relative to that legislation and also sign up on the registry. We've just recently established the Human Tissue Transplant Council, so soon they'll be out there meeting and setting up the registry where you can actually sign up to be a donor. Okay. So that form, it's separate. Not that they are not linked in some way, but you would have to complete a form in order. Completing this form wouldn't allow you to donate an organ. You definitely have to complete the form under that legislation.
So just for the edification, so if the person says, listen, do everything possible to save me, if that doesn't work, they can still be an organ donor, provided that
they've registered.
They've registered. Or they can say, listen, if this happens, don't prolong this thing, end this thing right away and get my organs over to the next person to use. Either way, it could work. Right? Okay. Hopefully people don't see that overly insensitive, but that's life, right? Or death. That's one of the. I'm sorry. People are going to say, "Boy, what are you smoking today?" It's my lack of chocolate. But I'm looking at this in relation to the things that we're seeing internationally and some of the almost challenging, vexing instances that have transpired, in the decades past, where one family member wants one thing, another family member wants something, and end of the day, the person is there, and nobody seems to be concerned about what would that patient have wanted. Extending that person's right to be heard even when they can't physically communicate with us.
And that's why these advance directives are so important, because this puts down in black and white what your wishes are, and makes it very clear for your next of kin and your loved ones that this is how you would like it to be done.
Now, you shared earlier that it's as long as what the person has asked for isn't, illegal or improper for the physicians to do, the individual given the advance directive can fairly much specify what I would like. And the more, exhaustive, the more sort of instructive that they can be, the better, the easier it is for the family and the physician.
Yeah, and it'll be a very personal thing, what you want, what you don't want, what your views are on different interventions and care. And the forms allow you to tailor it very much for, and it may be that, you just feel very strongly about one particular aspect. So, for example, the only thing you want to make sure everybody understands is you do not want to be resuscitated. You just want a DNR. You're not speaking about feeding tubes. You're not speaking about ventilation. It's just strictly as simple as that, and that's all that you put in place in your directive. You may want to make sure that everybody understands that whatever it takes, do everything possible. Don't stop. That might be something you put in your directive too. So, and as we were talking about earlier, once you've made your directive, it's not set in stone either. You do have the opportunity to go back and amend it, to revoke it, to put different ones in place.
Right. Now, to whom that this may be somewhat new, what would be the best way for them to get advice and guidance as to what to include? Now, the draft sort of forms are instructive, but would they meet with their physician, do an annual checkup and say, hey, this thing is on the cards now. Well, what should I be thinking about? Or do they talk to their lawyer, or do they just go one day and look at the rocks on the beach? What?
Well, you could speak with your lawyer or your attorney. You could, but I would propose that you start initially with your doctor and your family members, persons who, your physician who is maybe not necessarily close to you, but they know your medical history, and of course your family members and close friends, because they are the ones who you speak with on a daily basis. So I would suggest that that is where you would start having the conversation. Those are the persons you would be talking. I'm thinking about this. What do I do? What do you suggest? I want to make sure that if and when anything happens, then, my preferences are, or my wishes are honored. So the physician, I would say, and your family members or close friends would be the starting point.
Perhaps asking the family members too, what would you be comfortable doing? What, would you want? Because some of us may think we're being rational and objective and stoic to an extent. We'll make sure you do this, but when we're faced with that point, is that what we really would want our families to be subjected to, whether it's all in or limited or nothing?
Yeah, and that's something that, when you're talking to somebody as your potential proxy, the person, if somebody approaches you and says, will you be my healthcare proxy, you have to think about what an awesome responsibility that's going to be. And the situation that you'll be in, and you'll have to be comfortable taking that on, because the person who's asking you to do that is literally putting their life in your hands,
literally, when
they're not able to speak for themselves. Wow. So it's not a small thing, and you want to make sure too that if you were agreeing to act as somebody's proxy, that you're confident that you understand what their wishes are and what their values are, what's important to them, and that you're also have a certain level of confidence that you'll be able to act on those when the time comes. It's a really difficult time.
Like when you're traveling and you're in the emergency room, they'll come to you and say, hey, listen, you're expected to be able to do these things, for that extra couple of inches of this is a little bit wider in the emergency room. Tall folks like you might not.
It's not an overnight decision, Dwayne.
No,
it's not. It's a process to get there.
Yeah.
As I said on the show on Monday morning, my dad is 90, and he will not entertain it. His physician has encouraged him, and he won't have it. He just doesn't. He's not interested. Why are they asking me this? And my sister tries to explain to him, and he's like, no. No.
And it's also worth considering having more than one proxy as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, and the law does allow for that. Because, it may be, like, for example, my proxy would likely be my husband. And, if we were in a motor vehicle accident together, we could end up in a situation where both of us are incapacitated. So having another proxy would be important.
That's true.
Now, would both proxies, can it be more than two? I mean, is there a limit? Is there a maximum number?
No.
Will they all have to act in concert so that, everybody agrees to do this?
So the law outlines how proxies need to conduct themselves and be guided. And it requires, if a proxy has made a decision, they must inform the other proxies as well. So it doesn't require that you have like a caucus of proxies, but it does require that, if I've made a decision and there are other proxies, that I have communicated to them that, this is what I've decided, this is what I've told the doctors to do, and they would be informed of that.
So like the succession law, and where this one ranks first and then this one second, the proxies, it isn't like that. They're all joint and several and what have you. Yeah. Everybody's, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Well, we have a news break to go to. You guys want to continue with us when we come back? Share some more, and we'll take some calls, a couple of the questions to ask. And, hey, might get our chocolate yet? Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman. Headline. Radio Cayman's newsroom. Headline. These are the biggest stories right now.
former Department of Immigration officers get 12.5 years for possession of cocaine with intent to supply. Immigration workers Oscar Watler and Stephen Hurlston were convicted of possessing 1.61 pounds of cocaine in May. During trial, the court heard that an officer discovered Watler and Hurlston in a vacant parking lot with a controlled drug. When discovered, both men expressed regret and asked the officer to turn a blind eye. The judge delivered her sentence earlier today. Both have been remanded into custody. Time spent will be taken into consideration. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. Guyana says it will set up a temporary settlement for hundreds of people who have fled the economic collapse in neighboring Venezuela. Citizenship Minister Winston Felix says his government will lease land near the northwestern border with Venezuela to provide refugees with shelter, food and medicine. A strong aftershock jolted Venezuela's northeastern coast on Wednesday, following the most powerful earthquake to hit the area in more than a century, though officials said neither caused major damage or deaths, apparently due to their depth. The magnitude 7.3 quake on Tuesday was the largest to strike Venezuela since 1900. And Hawaii residents rushed to stores to stock up on bottled water, ramen, toilet paper and other supplies as they faced the threat of heavy rain, flash flooding and high surf as a hurricane churned toward the state. The National Weather Service said today that Hurricane Lane had weakened to a Category 4 hurricane, but those hurricanes with winds of more than 130 miles per hour or above can still cause catastrophic damage. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands. What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And as we talk about the consultation draft legislation for the healthcare decisions bill, honored to be able to have in our studio our Chief Officer, Ms. Jennifer Heron, together with Ms. Janet Flynn, the Senior Policy Advisor. Now, initially we spoke to the impetus for this proposed legislation. Ms. Jen, if you would be so kind as to remind us, why this, why now?
Yes, I mentioned earlier that one of the topics that we covered at the healthcare conference in 2015 was end-of-life care and end-of-life decisions. And one of the things that came out of that from the discussions around it was that we really don't have the ability currently to put an advance directive in place. So you can have the discussion with your family, you can even put it down on paper, you can have your lawyer witness it, but when it comes down to it, the physicians aren't always in a position to be able to honor it because the document doesn't have any legal standing here in the Cayman Islands. So one of the proposals that was put forward was that we needed to look at creating the legislation to be able to recognize advance directives, for them to have legal standing, to make sure that there was a clear framework to guide the physicians, the family members, and the patients in terms of how we can best honor people's wishes with end-of-life care.
Okay. Now with that, and we talked about how the process has to unfold, a witness, one being a physician, one being someone that's not, a relative or the like. Once that is done, well, tell us the process, how to ensure that this is a valid, recognizable document.
So the schedule to the draft legislation, and actually I should back up and I should say that I've mentioned end-of-life care, and it's not just an end-of-life care. It's to deal with when you're incapacitated and not able to communicate your wishes for yourself. So it might be that you're unconscious as a result of we've talked about a motor vehicle accident. In that situation, your advance directive would be referred to determine, what you have recorded in terms of your care. So it may or may not be an end-of-life situation, but it's really to make sure, that your healthcare decisions and preferences are there so that people can refer to them when you're not able to express them yourself. So the draft or the proposed legislation has a schedule in it which outlines the forms that would be used for creating an advance directive, nominating a proxy or proxies. And it requires that for the directive to be valid, that there are two witnesses to it. One is a physician, a medical doctor, and the other would be a witness who is not a beneficiary, a potential beneficiary, or at least at the time of signing would have no way of possibly knowing that they might be a beneficiary. And that is in place for several reasons. The physician is there, as Janet was discussing earlier, to make sure that the physician is there to certify that they're confident that you haven't done this against your will, that you've done it voluntarily, that you are mentally competent to make this directive at that time, that you understand what you have put forward as your wishes and what the implications of that are. And then the other witness is there as a non-beneficiary, so that it's a protection against, potential. You hear like the horror stories about, the person who stands to inherit the estate going and forcing, the family member to sign to say, don't do anything, when really the family member wants to be have as many interventions as they can. So that's how the advance directive would be formed. The witnesses are there. I know, Jen, is there anything I've missed on that?
You've covered everything.
Yeah. So, and as we said earlier, we're looking for the public now to take a look and tell us, particularly with the forms, because the public will be the ones who are filling these out. Take a look, see if it makes sense to you, see if you think it's easy to use and you'd be happy to fill it out. And, just as a reminder, we talked earlier, this is not going to compel anybody to do anything. It's not mandatory. This is creating a framework so that those people who wish to do so can have an advance directive in place and have that opportunity to have some level of comfort that their wishes will be known and hopefully honored at the time when they're not able to express them for themselves.
We have a comment online asking, we talked about, not just at the end of life, but what would be the scenario where, as I think I interpret and understand what this person is asking, where the person, isn't in a coma or a vegetative state, but is just not able to, do for him or herself. So you have to care for the person. They're not comatose, they're not, vegetative, but
it could be unconscious.
Yeah, and
it could be a temporary situation. We've talked about like the motor vehicle accident. You're not, you're unconscious as a result of the accident, and it may be a temporary state, but in that moment, if there are things that the physicians are trying to determine whether or not an intervention that they want to do, they would have that advance directive to refer to see if there's anything in there that they need to be aware of.
Let me read what this person has, because I just responded asking, and they say, scenarios, what if your family member, I'll substitute word bedridden, maybe that'd be easier for us. So, person is incapacitated in a sense that you got to do anything for the person, and they're not in that state where they can do it for themselves. They're not talking, but they just can't get up and go on their own. Would this sort of come into play in that instance as well?
Do they have? I guess it's around the mental competency.
Right. They're mentally there. They're not incompetent. They can think, and it's just that they are not mobile.
Not mobile, probably not able to speak, perhaps.
If the patient is mentally incompetent, if they don't have the mental capacity to understand and respond to and make decisions regarding their care, that would be when either the proxy or the advance directive would be referred to in terms of making decisions around their care. If the patient is just physically incapacitated but still mentally competent and able to communicate, then that would be how their decisions would be made and communicated by the patient.
By the patient, yeah. Yeah, the things that sometimes we face, we don't even recognize that they're not unprecedented. It's just that we're unaware of it. Here's an opportunity for us to have that dialogue and to not try to foresee every conceivable situation, but at least have an insight into what is probable, and maybe even learn of what has transpired previously within our own communities.
Yeah, one of the things I found when we started the consultation with the stakeholder group I was surprised at how often it comes up for them as healthcare providers.
Mm-hmm.
When we went into the discussions, I sort of thought it was an issue. I didn't really have an appreciation of how big of a problem it was and how frequently it was an issue. And, it was weekly, if not a couple of times a week, I think, that we were hearing that this issue comes up, and that if there had been an advance directive, things would have been that much easier for the family. The outcome might have been, a lot less fraught and a lot less difficult. And unfortunately, there are situations where it seems that the patient's suffering sometimes gets prolonged in the absence of being able to act on what their expressed wishes were before they became incapacitated. And some of the stories that we heard from some of the providers, and it puts the providers in a very difficult position.
I mean, they've taken a Hippocratic oath. They're there to do as much as they can.
First, do no harm.
First, yes.
And and it's hard for them as practitioners when they see this struggle with the families, the family members, and so on. I guess one thing, actually, talking about practitioners, and there are provisions in the legislation whereby a practitioner can sort of conscientiously object, and if they're not prepared to honor the advance directive, and they then are required under the legislation to transfer the care of that patient to another physician who is prepared to act in accordance with that. So, sometimes that there are certain faith-based beliefs that some patients might have, or some physicians might have, that would put them in a situation where what's in the advance directive and their beliefs don't actually align. So there is a requirement under the law, if that kind of a situation arises, that the physician must transfer the patient's care to another physician to take care of them.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, you're in that position, and your training, your experience tells you, well, let's try everything,
And I think that exactly, I think that is sometimes the tension that arises is that sometimes there is a feeling that we're going to try everything, we're going to do everything we can, whereas the desire of the patient may not have been that they want you to try and do everything.
Could we ask of you? We could do it after the break. I just put it on the table now. Not put you in an untenable position, but sometimes we need prompting. We need a little cue. I would ask you, how would you advise, counsel, suggest, help to guide your family in starting this discussion? Maybe it's the spouses just amongst themselves. Maybe it's the family over Sunday dinner. Maybe it's the backyard. Because it's not this wasn't an easy discussion to prepare for. You've made it easy by being so professional, but it gets you to think your own for your loved ones as well. And nobody wants to face the end. I keep looking at a couple of comments from our people here. I'm thinking, Colin, I can't read that on here without joking. But it is hard. I'm going to actually share with you something just during the break to see if this is par for the course or as the like. Maybe we could ask for that when we come back.
Sure.
How to broach that discussion. Well, little Johnny, you see, your body's changed. Not the same discussion. Hey, 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. Why don't we just give you some of the things, as well. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Congratulations, it's a boy.
During the greatest events of your life, whether or not you have the right health insurance coverage should be the last thing on your mind. That's why at Fidelity Health, we are committed to helping you get matched with the right plan to suit you and your family. We offer a range of plans to suit your budget, plus access to a network of quality care throughout the Caribbean and the USA. You can relax and enjoy life's greatest moments when you are covered with Fidelity Health. Call us today at 949-7822 for a free quote.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium.
For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Are you at risk for high blood pressure? Here are a few things you can do to lower that risk. Eat a balanced diet and reduce your salt intake. Exercise daily. Stop smoking and drink less alcohol. And follow your doctor's advice. For more information, contact the Public Health Department on 244-2889. This message is brought to you by the Public Health Department in conjunction with the Ministry of Health.
There are times when you need to stand and fight, and times when it makes more sense to hunker down and ride it out. I'm Charles Whitaker, reminding you that you need to know where you are going to safely shelter before the storm strikes. For more information, visit caymanprepared.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us. And again, a special thanks to our Chief Officer and our Senior Policy Advisor for helping us to understand this proposed legislation and to be able to at least be cognizant of the opportunity to put our input to the end of September. Mm-hmm. It's important, I think, for us to recognize that a lot of things are changing in our society, and the frequency with which we are encountering these instances maybe a little bit more than we come to appreciate. Mm-hmm. Now, in that instance, I was asking this prior to the break. Like everything, we need to sometimes a little bit of nurturing and guiding as to how to have certain conversations as good parents with our children, as adults and responsible adults with our aging parents, with our spouses, with our children. What would be your, if I may ask, what would be your sort of suggestion or advice as to how to broach this subject?
It's a difficult one to broach, and it's really going to depend on everybody personally. Mm-hmm. I know certainly, we've been talking about a lot more in my house because we're working on this legislation. And also certainly, as I mentioned, my grandmother's passing a few years ago. That was a time that we did have some conversations among my family as well. And it can be awkward. I don't know. Sometimes the best way to start is just to dive in. But it depends on the sensitivities of your family and your situation. And it's probably a conversation certainly you'd want to have quietly one-on-one with your partner, and make sure that you guys are comfortable with that. And, even though I've talked to my husband about it, but I haven't really figured out if I want to tell my children, my kids are 15 and 13 and, they're sort of old enough that we could have that conversation, but
do you want to burden them?
I'm not sure that I'm in that position to have it with them just yet. So, I recognize it's a difficult conversation. Facing our mortality is not something any of us really wants to do. And, it's not a happy conversation.
You'll be surprised. For years I've been trying to have a discussion with professionals about that issue, end of life and the like. Privately, no problem. Come on the show, and because we're facing that, it's going to happen. I mean,
it's inevitable.
Yeah, I'm trying to postpone it, but it's going to happen. And I can make light of it in some respects because it's just my nature. But if we don't address something, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and the other place you might want to start the conversation too, if you're not sure how to broach it with your friends or family members, is your physician. And I think it's also, we have to encourage our healthcare practitioners to get a little more comfortable having these conversations as well. And that was one of the speakers that we had at the conference in 2015. He talked about the challenges he has with the doctors in the hospital where he worked in terms of, how to coach them to have these conversations with their patients. Some of them, he said, even when the patient initiated the conversation, the physician was kind of like, oh, well, and he sort of had a cheat sheet that he had put together to guide them. And he said he was threatening to tattoo it on all of their forearms that they would have it to guide the conversation. But it's, maybe talk to your doctor to just kick it off and start getting some of your thoughts out there. But it is really important.
Get to understand what options would exist in certain circumstances so that you'll know that this is what this means. And, I learned a few things about this process. And I thought, wow, I didn't realize that. We see it in the movies. It's not like in the movies, Yeah, you may read the headlines in the media because of some famous case amongst the battling members of a family over a particular loved one. But when you're faced with it, maybe you understand. So as we look at the healthcare decisions bill, is that what it's going to be? There's the healthcare decisions.
It would be the healthcare decisions law.
Right?
Yeah.
Once
it's passed.
Right. So the healthcare decisions, so proposed legislation for that. Go to the Ministry of Health website for the draft legislation. Not terribly long, not difficult to read. It's quite easy.
Yeah, so if you're not used to reviewing legislation, the first section is sort of a memorandum. It's an overview. It's like the executive summary of the clauses. That'll give you an idea of what's in there. And then, as we were talking earlier, the schedule is where the forms are. So take a look at the schedule as well. And if you want to get into the deeper details, then you can get into it clause by clause. It's, dealing with legislation. Legislation is written for attorneys and lawmakers, and sometimes you'll read it and think, what the heck is that supposed to mean? Which is why the overview that's at the beginning of the bill is really useful to sort of guide you in the sections as well.
Yeah, I think one day we'll get to that point where it's drafted in a language that's much easier.
But also,
I won't go there.
The FAQs are fairly straightforward and simple in terms of the answers and the responses. So that should guide the process. And then if you have any further questions regarding the details of the legislation.
And I think something that you shared a couple of times, but worth repeating, this isn't mandatory. Nobody's going to be obligated. It's something that if you want to do,
then you'll have the opportunity to do it.
And there's a process that, makes it, I use the phrase legal, so that when you do it this way, it carries weight.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It will carry weight. It will be valid under law. It can be upheld under law. And it's an important framework for us to have in place.
Yeah, I comment came in early and I was hemming and hawing, but when I asked it, someone was asking if there's any way that one of these sort of directives could be challenged by a family member. So they fleshed it out, presumably the person who's given it is competent, of age. It's all legit. They were very healthy. They never changed it. They updated it to make sure that. But down the road, something happens, and as reluctantly as the family may want to, they implemented it. But someone, whoever that person is, says, "I'm not sure. I think, Johnny may want something different. Can it be challenged? And if so, by whom and in what process?"
Well, it's not about a challenge per se. It's more, there's an ethics committee that each hospital should establish. And if you're not able to establish one, then you would draw in on one or the other established ethics committee. So that gives you an opportunity. There's a provision in there that they can actually revoke or look at revocation depending on the circumstances. And they can also... You have the opportunity also to get a second opinion from another medical doctor in the event that you're not in agreement with what is being proposed.
And there's some exceptions for the healthcare providers where they can refuse to act on a directive. That's in section 23, clause 23, and it talks about a registered practitioner may refuse to act on a directive if the practitioner A reasonably believes the directive maker did not intend the directive to apply in that particular circumstance, or B, reasonably believes the directive does not reflect the directive maker's current wishes and the registered practitioner complies with Section 18 as another section of the law. Also says that they can refuse to comply with the provision of a directive that specifies the type of health care the directive maker wishes to receive if the provision is A, not consistent with any relevant professional standards, or B, does not reflect the island's current healthcare standards. And subsection 2 shall not apply to any provision of the directive except a barred provision that wishes for the denial of a particular or of any healthcare. So that's an exemption there. And then the one we talked about earlier about the conscientious grounds, where they have to then hand off their care. So, and I mentioned earlier that the patient's best interest is really the overriding principle that has to be adhered to under the directive, under the law, and certainly under the advanced directive. And I'm trying to find the definition, which we had.
And while we're...
So the best interest of a directive maker means the directive maker's proper health care and the protection of the directive maker's health interest, having regard to the relevant guidelines of the General Medical Council of the United Kingdom and the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice under Section 35 of our local health practice law.
Now, is there any obligation on the part of the person, issuing advance directive to inform anyone, spouse, any other relative or otherwise? Because presumably the witness to the directive and the medical practitioner and the individual and our proxies would be the only ones that need to know or would know, but is there a requirement that they say, to inform somebody else?
We would encourage you to make sure that your family members are all aware that you have an advance directive. There isn't going to be a central registry of advance directives. It'll be up to you as an individual to make sure that your general practitioner has one, that there's a copy of it somewhere accessible, that your family knows where to find it in the event that the need is there. You may want to put it on your patient file at the hospitals. It's really going to be down to the individual to make sure that they've communicated to the people around them that this advance directive is there and that they would like it to be honoured.
I mean, I'm thinking of the patient portal that the HSA has, for instance, and you're travelling some way to ensure that, God forbid, something was to happen to you elsewhere, that if you choose to have that honoured there, that you have it somewhat accessible or a way for the physicians at some point there to be able to know, well, this is what this patient would have wanted had we been cognizant of it.
Yeah, and I imagine that, the hospitals will have the ability to pull up your patient file and note that this patient has an advance directive, and then the physician will find it on your file, assuming that you have gone and filed it with them.
Wow.
They're actually in the schedule of the legislation. There are a number of persons that they said you should give your advance directive to: your proxy, your family members, your doctor, the hospital, and nursing home if applicable. So
it's all about empowering and informing, giving them an opportunity to be a part of, Now, you saw that, right? That was a beautiful...
I think I saw chocolate.
You saw chocolate. Listen, DJ Lynn, that's why he is DJ Lynn, an amazing fellow, And he's getting to understand the importance of chocolate. That's not a bad selection. Maybe he go a little bit darker with the chocolate, maybe a little sweeter with the flavor, but we'll talk about that later.
That's a cocoa.
Anyway, we've got focus back there, Susan. No, do you see? I keep telling you I can make her blush. Look, do you see her? Just so wonderful.
Poor Susan.
Oh, I trust me. She's richly blessed, man. I thank you very much for allowing me to, get through this discussion, and hopefully our public appreciates the importance of it. Perhaps now looks at the draft legislation and starts that conversation, and maybe send some input to improve what potentially could be something debated in the House and beneficial to our populace. Perhaps, Ms. Janet, start with you first. Any sort of quick closing comments or thoughts, and then Ms. Jen?
Okay, Dwayne, thank you for having us today. I really hope that we get the word out and we have persons submit their comments on the proposed bill. The deadline for submission is the 30th of September, and that leaves you 37 days. Did I say 37 or 38 days?
37.
And The website is www.ministryofhealth.gov.ky. There is available the consultation draft, the press release, and the FAQs. You can submit your comments to Janet Flynn, that's JANETT.FLYNN@gov.ky, or you may contact me by phone at 244-2374. And I really do look forward to getting the comments. And like I say, whether it's for or against, we accept all comments, and we encourage everybody. It's not an older person's bill. It's for everybody once you turn 18 and over. Okay. Thank you.
Just to say thank you very much again for having us on this afternoon, and to everybody who tuned in, thank you for listening. And to encourage everyone, as Janet said, please, go on the website, download the information or review the information. But also, as we've been talking about, start having those conversations. Have the conversation with your doctor, your family members, and start thinking about what your wishes might be and how you might want to see those honored. It's a difficult conversation to have. It's not a comfortable conversation, but it's so important, and it can make such a difference in a really bad time for your friends and family if they know what your wishes are and they're in a position to have them honored.
Thank you all very much. And the frequently asked questions, the FAQs really are informative. They help us to appreciate the legislation, and hopefully it gives us some talking points, as it were, so that we move forward. I invite you to enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and maybe you can partake of the chocolate as we exit. I don't know. We have to see what Susan has in store for us, And we thank DJ Lynn for being that purveyor of fine chocolate. He could be a chocolatier. I don't know. We'll see. Hey, to our listeners, we live in a beautiful, blessed country. And if you're doing your best to make it even better, thank you. If you're not, why not? Step up to the plate, man. It's a good place. On behalf of Susan, she is asking you to be mindful that it's raining and wet outside. The roads are, not necessarily dry anymore, so be absolutely careful. All right? Want to be careful outside. I did my hair, so I don't want to get it wet. That's good. Tomorrow's another day. Pray that we're a part of it. Come back for Talk Today right after the midday news. Join us for the buzz in the morning. And until then, be blessed.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.